The fluorescent lights of the grocery store buzzed overhead as Rebecca stood in line, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. In her trembling hands, she clutched a small pack of diapers and a worn leather wallet that had seen better days. Her 6-month-old son, Tyler, was at home with her neighbor, probably crying by now. She'd run out of diapers 2 days ago and had been making do with cut-up towels and prayer. It wasn't working anymore. Rebecca's fingers fumbled through the wallet for what felt like the 100th time that day. 3 crumpled dollar bills, a 5 that was so worn it felt like fabric, and then the coins. She'd already counted them in the car, but she counted again anyway, hoping somehow the total would magically increase. Quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies scattered across her palm. Her math had to be right. It had to be. The woman in front of her finished paying and left. Rebecca stepped forward, placing the diaper pack on the conveyor belt like it was made of glass. The cashier, a tired-looking woman probably in her 50s, scanned it without looking up. "847, she said in a monotone voice that suggested she'd said those same words 10,000 times before. Rebecca's hands shook harder now. She placed the bills on the counter first, smoothing them out carefully. Then came the coins. She started counting them out loud, her voice barely a whisper. "That's $3 in bills. And 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters. That's $4. Then these dimes." "Honey, you can just give me the coins and I'll count them," the cashier said, her voice softening just a little. "No, I need to make sure," Rebecca replied, her cheeks burning red. She could feel the people behind her in line getting impatient. Someone sighed loudly. Another person shifted their weight from foot to foot, their shopping basket clanking. Rebecca's eyes began to blur with tears, but she blinked them back. She couldn't cry here. Not in front of all these people. Not when her 3-year-old daughter, Lily, was waiting at home wearing shoes with holes in them. Not when the rent was already 2 weeks late, and the landlord had left another note on her door this morning. It had been 3 weeks since the hotel let her go. Budget cuts, they said. Last hired, first fired. She'd only been working there for 5 months, cleaning rooms and trying her best to be fast enough, thorough enough, invisible enough to keep the job. But it hadn't mattered. 23 people got laid off that day, and Rebecca was one of them. The unemployment office said it would take 4 to 6 weeks to process her claim. Her bank account had 42 cents in it. The food stamps she'd applied for wouldn't come through for another 2 weeks, maybe 3. She'd sold her TV, her laptop, and most of her jewelry just to pay for last month's rent. There was nothing left to sell except her phone, and she needed that to search for jobs and stay in contact with the few people who could help watch her kids. 847, Rebecca said finally, pushing the pile of money toward the cashier. "That's exactly 847, right?" The cashier counted it carefully, her weathered hands sorting the coins with practiced efficiency. The seconds felt like hours. Rebecca held her breath. "That's right, honey. Exactly 847. Rebecca's knees nearly buckled with relief. She grabbed the plastic bag containing the diapers and clutched it to her chest like it was a brick of gold. "Thank you," she whispered, and turned to leave as quickly as possible. But her legs felt weak. Her vision was getting spotty around the edges. When was the last time she'd eaten? Yesterday morning. She'd given Lily her cereal and fed Tyler his formula. But there hadn't been enough for her. She told herself she wasn't hungry anyway. That was a lie, but it was the kind of lie mothers tell themselves when there's no other choice. As Rebecca walked through the automatic doors, the cool evening air hit her face. She made it 3 steps into the parking lot before the tears came. Big, ugly, choking sobs that she'd been holding in for weeks. She stumbled toward her beat-up Honda Civic, the one with the dent in the passenger door and the engine light that had been on for 6 months. She slid into the driver's seat and just sat there, crying into her hands, the bag of diapers sitting in her lap. This was her life now, counting coins, choosing between diapers and food, apologizing for existing, for taking up space, for being too slow counting her money in the checkout line. 3 years ago, she'd been different. She'd had a decent job at a call center, an apartment she could afford, a boyfriend who'd promised to help raise the kids. Then the call center moved overseas. The boyfriend left when she got pregnant with Tyler. Her mother, the only family she had left, passed away suddenly from a heart attack. And just like that, Rebecca's whole world had collapsed like a house of cards. She'd been fighting so hard to keep everything together, applying to every job she could find, selling everything that wasn't nailed down, skipping meals, making impossible choices every single day. But tonight, sitting in that parking lot with 8 cents to her name and no idea how she'd buy formula tomorrow, Rebecca felt like she was drowning and there was no one around to pull her back up. What she didn't know was that someone had been watching. Someone who understood exactly what it felt like to count pennies and feel the weight of impossible choices. Someone who was standing by his own car 3 spots away, watching her shoulders shake with sobs and feeling his heart break into pieces. David Chen had gone into that grocery store on a whim. He'd been driving home from his office feeling restless and disconnected. His assistant had reminded him 3 times that week that he needed to stay grounded and remember where he came from. So instead of having his housekeeper shop for him like usual, he'd decided to do it himself, just to remember what normal people dealt with every day. He'd ended up behind Rebecca in line purely by chance. Or maybe it was fate. He didn't believe much in fate. But watching that young mother count out her coins with shaking hands, hearing her voice crack when she apologized for taking too long, seeing the defeat in her eyes when she grabbed that one small pack of diapers, something inside him had cracked wide open. David was 53 years old. He ran a manufacturing company that employed over 800 people. He lived in a house with 6 bedrooms and drove a car that cost more than most people made in 2 years. But 40 years ago, he'd been the kid whose mother counted coins at the grocery store. He'd been the kid who wore shoes with holes in them and pretended he wasn't hungry at school. He remembered every detail of that shame, every sideways glance from other shoppers, every sigh of impatience from the people in line. Every night his mother cried in the bathroom because she thought he couldn't hear her. Now standing in that parking lot, watching Rebecca cry in her car, David made a decision. He didn't know her name yet. He didn't know her story. But he knew that look of absolute desperation, and he knew he couldn't just walk away. Not this time. Not when he finally had the power to actually do something about it. He pulled out his phone and made a call to his assistant. "Jennifer, I need you to do something for me first thing tomorrow morning. It's important." As Rebecca finally started her car and drove away, David stood there making plans that would change not just one life but hundreds. Plans that started with a simple question he'd been asking himself for 20 years. If you have the power to help someone who's drowning and you just walk away, what does that make you? He'd finally found his answer, and tomorrow everything would begin to change. David Chen couldn't sleep that night. He kept seeing that young mother's face, the way her hands trembled, the way she'd counted those coins like each one was precious. He lay in his king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling of his bedroom that was probably bigger than her entire apartment, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, guilt mixed with purpose. At 3 a.m, he finally gave up on sleep and went downstairs to his home office. He pulled out an old photo album he kept in his desk drawer, one he hadn't looked at in years. The pages were yellowed and some of the photos were fading, but the memories were crystal clear. There was a picture of his mother, standing in front of their tiny apartment building. She was young in the photo, maybe 30, wearing a dress she'd sewn herself because buying clothes wasn't an option. Her smile was tired but genuine. David remembered the day that photo was taken. It was his 8th birthday, and somehow, despite having nothing, his mother had managed to make him a cake from scratch and buy him one small toy truck from the thrift store. He flipped through more pages, pictures of their cramped kitchen where his mother would cook meals that stretched for days, the living room that doubled as his bedroom, where he'd sleep on a pull-out couch and do his homework on a card table, the community center where he'd spent his afternoons because his mother worked 2 jobs and couldn't afford childcare. David's father had left when he was 5, just walked out one day and never came back. His mother, who barely spoke English at the time, had worked as a seamstress during the day and cleaned office buildings at night. She'd ride 2 buses to get to each job, sometimes not getting home until midnight, only to wake up at 5 a.m. to do it all over again. He remembered one night in particular when he was about 10 years old. He'd woken up to use the bathroom and heard crying. He'd followed the sound to the kitchen and found his mother sitting at the table, surrounded by bills and coins. Just like that young woman in the store, she was counting and recounting, trying to figure out how to make $37 stretch for another week. She hadn't noticed him standing in the doorway. When she finally looked up and saw him, she'd wiped her tears quickly and smiled. "Go back to bed, my love," she'd said in her heavy accent. Everything is okay, but everything wasn't okay. David had known it even then. He'd seen the worry lines deepen on her face. He'd noticed when she started skipping meals, claiming she'd already eaten at work. He'd heard the phone calls with the landlord, his mother begging for one more week, just one more week to pay the rent. That's when David had started working. At 10 years old, he began helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries for tips. At 12, he had a paper route. At 14, he worked at a local restaurant washing dishes. Every penny went to his mother, who cried each time but never refused because she needed it too desperately. Now, 43 years later, David was worth more money than his mother could have ever imagined. His company did $15 million in business last year. He had investments, properties, and a retirement fund that could support 10 families for life. But none of that wealth had ever felt meaningful until last night, watching that mother in the grocery store. At 6 a.m, David called his assistant Jennifer before she'd even left for work. "Jennifer, I need you to help me find someone," he said without preamble. "Good morning to you too, boss," Jennifer replied, stifling a yawn. She'd worked for David for 12 years and was used to his early morning calls. "Who are we looking for?" "A young woman, late 20s maybe, with 2 kids. She was at the Save Mart on Riverside Boulevard last night around 7. She paid for diapers with exact change. I need to find out who she is." There was a pause on the other end. "David, that sounds a little stalkerish, not gonna lie." "I know how it sounds," David said. "But Jennifer, you should have seen her. She was counting coins with shaking hands, apologizing to everyone around her. She left that store and sat in her car crying. I can't stop thinking about it. I have to help her." Jennifer's voice softened. She'd heard David's stories about growing up poor. She knew why this mattered to him. "Okay, let me see what I can do. I'll call the store manager. She knows me from the company donations we do every year. Maybe she can help." By noon, Jennifer had the information. The store manager had been hesitant at first, worried about privacy concerns, but Jennifer had assured her that David's intentions were good. She'd even mentioned his history of helping employees and community members in need. Finally, the manager had relented. "Her name is Rebecca Walsh," Jennifer told David, reading from her notes. 27 years old, 2 kids. She's a regular at that store, always using coupons, always counting her money carefully. The manager says she's polite and clearly trying her best. She mentioned that Rebecca used to work at the Grand Plaza Hotel downtown but lost her job a few weeks ago. David sat back in his chair, absorbing this information. Rebecca. She had a name now. She was real, not just a symbol of something from his past. "What else did you find out?" he asked. "I made some calls," Jennifer continued. "I spoke with the HR manager at the Grand Plaza. She remembered Rebecca well, said she was one of their best housekeepers, always on time, never complained, always professional. They had to let her go during budget cuts along with about 20 other people. The HR manager actually got a little emotional talking about it, said it wasn't fair because Rebecca was a single mom trying so hard." David drummed his fingers on his desk. An idea was forming, but he needed more information first. "Can you find out if she's been applying to jobs?" Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "David, I can't exactly hack into her personal email." No, I don't mean that. I mean, check with our HR department. See if she's applied to any positions with us. Check with some of the other companies we work with, too. I want to know what she's been doing to try to get back on her feet." "Give me an hour," Jennifer said. An hour later, David had his answer. Rebecca had applied to 17 jobs in the past 3 weeks, including 2 positions at Chen Industries. She'd applied for a customer service role and a receptionist position. Both applications had been rejected. The customer service position had been filled by someone with more experience, and the receptionist role had gone to someone with a 4-year degree. David felt anger rising in his chest. Not at his HR department. They were just following standard hiring protocols. But at the system itself. Here was a woman with years of customer service experience from working in a hotel. She was hardworking, reliable, and desperate for an opportunity. But she didn't have the right credentials on paper, so she got passed over. He thought about all the times he'd heard business leaders talk about finding qualified candidates and needing people with the right skills. What they really meant was people who looked good on paper, people who could afford to go to college, people who hadn't had their lives derailed by circumstances beyond their control. David buzzed his HR director, Patricia, and asked her to come to his office immediately. "Patricia, tell me about our hiring process," he said when she arrived. She looked confused. What specifically do you want to know?" "Everything. Walk me through what happens when someone applies for a job here." Patricia spent the next 20 minutes explaining their system. Applications went through an automated screening first, filtering out anyone who didn't meet basic qualifications. Then HR would review the remaining applications, looking for relevant experience and education. The top candidates would get interviews. "So if someone doesn't have a degree, they're automatically filtered out for most positions?" David asked. "Well, not all positions, but many of them, yes. It's pretty standard across most companies." "And if someone has years of relevant experience but lost their job due to circumstances beyond their control, and they're applying from a place of desperation rather than just career advancement, do we take that into consideration?" Patricia shifted uncomfortably. "David, we don't have access to that kind of personal information during the hiring process. We can't ask about people's financial situations or family circumstances. That could open us up to discrimination lawsuits." David understood the logic. He really did, but he also understood that sometimes logic and compassion needed to find a way to coexist. "I want you to pull up the applications of Rebecca Walsh," he said. "She applied for 2 positions here recently." Patricia pulled out her laptop and typed for a moment. "Okay, I've got them." She applied for customer service and reception. Both applications were declined. For customer service, we went with someone who had 3 more years of experience. For reception, we needed someone with a bachelor's degree, and she only has a high school diploma. "What was her work history like?" "Mostly hospitality. She worked at the Grand Plaza for 5 months before they let her go. Before that, she worked at a call center for 2 years until they moved operations overseas. Before that, various retail and service jobs. Her references are all excellent, though. Every employer gave her glowing reviews about her work ethic and attitude." David leaned forward. "So we have someone with great references, proven work ethic, and relevant customer service experience, and we rejected her because she doesn't have a piece of paper from a university?" "David, those are our hiring standards. I want to create a new position," David interrupted. "I want to hire Rebecca Walsh, and I want to use her as the first participant in a new program we're going to develop." Patricia blinked. "What kind of program?" "I don't know yet," David admitted. "But I know this. We have hundreds of employees here. How many of them are one crisis away from being in Rebecca's situation? How many people in our community are struggling like she is, trying to work their way out of poverty but getting blocked at every turn because they don't have the right qualifications on paper?" He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where his employees' cars were lined up. Some were nice. Some were old and dented, probably held together with hope and duct tape. "I've been thinking about this all night," David continued. "When my mother was struggling, someone helped us. One of her employers found out about our situation and gave her a raise she hadn't asked for. Another time, our landlord reduced our rent because he saw how hard she was working. Those acts of kindness, they didn't just help us survive. They gave my mother hope, and that hope kept her going long enough for things to get better." He turned back to Patricia. "I want to create something here. Something that gives people like Rebecca not just a job but real support. Flexible hours for parents, help with childcare costs, a living wage, training opportunities. We have the resources to do this, Patricia. The question is, do we have the will?" Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. "You know what? Yes, let's do this, but we need to do it right. Let me put together a proposal. Give me a week to research best practices and figure out what this could look like legally and practically." "You have 3 days," David said. "And Patricia? Don't tell Rebecca anything yet. I want to do this right, but I also want to move fast. Every day we wait is another day she's struggling to feed her kids." As Patricia left his office, David felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Real, meaningful purpose. He'd built a successful business, sure. He'd made money and created jobs. But this felt different. This felt like finally using his success for something that mattered beyond profit margins and quarterly reports. He picked up his phone and looked at the photo of his mother he'd saved there years ago. She'd passed away 5 years back, but he could still hear her voice clearly in his mind. "When you have enough," she used to tell him, "it's your duty to make sure others have enough too." Well, Mom, David thought, I finally figured out what you meant. For 3 days, David's office became a war room. Patricia brought in the HR team, the operations manager, and even the company's legal counsel. They ordered pizza, stayed late, and hammered out the details of something that had never been done at Chen Industries before. Meanwhile, Rebecca had no idea any of this was happening. She was too busy trying to survive one more day. She'd found a few hours of work cleaning houses through a neighbor's referral. It wasn't much, just $20 here, $30 there, but it was something. She cleaned toilets and scrubbed floors while Tyler stayed with her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, who refused to take payment even though Rebecca tried to give her something every time. "You keep your money, Mia," Mrs. Rodriguez would say, bouncing Tyler on her hip. "When you get back on your feet, you help somebody else. That's how we survive." Rebecca had applied to 12 more jobs since the grocery store incident. 2 hadn't responded at all. 8 had sent automated rejection emails within hours. 2 had called her for phone screenings. But both had ended awkwardly when the recruiters asked about her childcare arrangements and her availability to work nights and weekends. "I can work any hours during the day," Rebecca had explained, "and I can sometimes do evenings if I can arrange for a sitter." The calls had ended shortly after. Nobody wanted to hire someone with complications. Nobody wanted to take a chance on a single mother with 2 small kids and limited flexibility. On the 3rd night after the grocery store, Rebecca sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, the one she'd managed to avoid selling because she needed it for job applications. Her daughter Lily was asleep in the bedroom they shared. Tyler was in his portable crib in the corner of the living room, finally quiet after an hour of crying. The baby had a cold, and Rebecca couldn't afford to take him to the doctor unless he got much worse. She was looking at her bank account. 42 cents. The cleaning job she'd done yesterday had been cash, and she'd already spent it on formula and a loaf of bread. Her unemployment claim was still processing. The food stamps were still 2 weeks away. And the landlord had left another note today, this one with the words "final notice" underlined 3 times. Rebecca put her head in her hands and tried not to cry. She was so tired of crying, so tired of being scared, so tired of feeling like a failure every single day. Her phone buzzed. Another rejection email, probably. She almost didn't look, but something made her check. It wasn't a rejection. It was a message from an unknown number. "Ms. Walsh, this is Jennifer Park, Executive Assistant to David Chen at Chen Industries. Mr. Chen would like to meet with you tomorrow regarding an employment opportunity. Please call this number at your earliest convenience to schedule a meeting." This is not a scam, I promise. You can look up our company online to verify. Rebecca read the message 3 times. Her heart was pounding. Chen Industries. She'd applied there weeks ago and had been rejected. Why would the CEO's assistant be contacting her now? It had to be a mistake. Or worse, some kind of scam. But what if it wasn't? With shaking hands, she typed the company name into Google. Chen Industries was real. Very real. It was a manufacturing company that made parts for electronics and appliances. They employed hundreds of people and had been in business for over 30 years. The CEO, David Chen, had a whole Wikipedia page about his rise from poverty to success. Rebecca stared at his picture on the company website. He looked kind. He had smile lines around his eyes. But why would someone like him want to meet with her? She looked at the clock. It was 9:30 at night. Too late to call. But she couldn't wait until morning. Her fingers hovered over the phone number in the text message. Finally, she pressed call. A woman answered on the second ring. "This is Jennifer. Hi, this is Rebecca Walsh. I just got your text message about a meeting, but I think there might be a mistake. I applied to Chen Industries a few weeks ago and was rejected. Are you sure you have the right person?" Jennifer's voice was warm and professional. "I'm positive, Rebecca. Mr. Chen specifically wants to meet with you. Would you be available tomorrow at 10 in the morning? Yes, I can do that. Can I ask what this is about? It's better if Mr. Chen explains in person, but I can tell you this isn't about the positions you applied for previously. This is something different, something new." Rebecca's mind was racing. Is this really not a scam? I'm sorry. I just have to ask because things like this don't happen to people like me. Jennifer laughed softly. I understand completely. You can call our main office number right now and ask for me, or you can show up tomorrow and decide for yourself. But Rebecca, I promise you this is legitimate. Mr. Chen is a good man and he genuinely wants to help. After they hung up, Rebecca sat in the dark for a long time, just thinking. Hope was dangerous. She'd learned that over the past few weeks. Every time she got her hopes up about a job, about a break, about anything getting better, she'd been crushed. Hope hurt worse than despair because at least with despair you knew what to expect. But this felt different somehow. She didn't know why, but something in Jennifer's voice had sounded genuine. Rebecca got up and walked to the bedroom where Lily was sleeping. Her daughter was 3 years old, small for her age because they'd had so many months where food was scarce. But she was smart and funny and the bravest little girl Rebecca had ever known. Lily never complained about being hungry. She never asked for toys or treats. She just accepted whatever life gave her with a smile that could break your heart. "Maybe something good is finally going to happen," Rebecca whispered, smoothing Lily's hair back from her forehead. "Maybe we're going to be okay." The next morning, Rebecca woke up at 6 even though the meeting wasn't until 10. She fed Tyler and gave Lily cereal for breakfast. She showered in lukewarm water because the hot water heater wasn't working right. She put on the same outfit she'd worn to every interview: black pants with a small stain on the knee that she'd tried to wash out, a white blouse that was a little yellowed around the collar, and a blazer she'd bought at Goodwill for $7. Mrs. Rodriguez agreed to watch both kids. "You look good, mija," confident they're going to love you. Rebecca took 2 buses to get to Chen Industries. The building was impressive, a modern glass and steel structure in the industrial part of town. She walked through the lobby, her old shoes clicking on the polished floor, and approached the reception desk. "I'm Rebecca Walsh. I have a meeting with Mr. Chen at 10. The receptionist smiled at her. "Of course, Ms. Park is expecting you. She'll be right down." 2 minutes later, Jennifer appeared. She was in her 50s, dressed professionally but not intimidatingly, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. "Rebecca, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. Can I get you coffee, water?" "Water would be great," Rebecca said, her mouth suddenly dry. Jennifer led her to a conference room on the 3rd floor. It had a huge window overlooking the city. Rebecca had never been in a room like this before. The table alone probably cost more than everything she owned. "Mr. Chen will be here in just a moment," Jennifer said, placing a bottle of water in front of Rebecca. "Please make yourself comfortable." When David walked in 3 minutes later, Rebecca stood up so fast she almost knocked over her chair. He was taller than she'd expected, dressed in a crisp shirt but no tie, and he had that same kind expression from his photos. "Rebecca, please sit," he said, gesturing to her chair. "Thank you so much for coming. I know this must seem very strange." "It does," Rebecca admitted, because what else could she say? David sat down across from her. For a moment he just looked at her, and Rebecca felt her cheeks getting hot. Did she have something on her face? Was her outfit wrong? "I'm going to be honest with you about something," David said finally. "I saw you at the grocery store last week. The Save Mart on Riverside. You were buying diapers." Rebecca's stomach dropped. Oh no, oh God. He'd seen her at her lowest moment. He'd watched her count coins and cry. This wasn't about a job. This was about pity. She started to stand up. "Please don't leave," David said quickly. "I know how that sounds. But please, just hear me out. Can you give me 5 minutes? Something in his voice made her sit back down. She crossed her arms defensively but nodded. "When I saw you counting those coins," David continued, "it reminded me of my mother. 40 years ago, she stood in a store just like that one, counting out exact change to buy food, while I stood next to her feeling helpless and ashamed. We were poor, Rebecca. Desperately poor. My father had left and my mother worked 2 jobs, but it was never enough." Rebecca's arms slowly uncrossed. She watched his face carefully. He wasn't looking at her with pity. He was looking at her with understanding. "I built this company from nothing," David went on. "I worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college. I started this business in a rented garage with borrowed equipment. And for years I told myself that my success was proof that the system works, that if you just work hard enough you can make it." He paused, looking out the window. "But watching you in that store I realized something. The system doesn't work. Not for everyone. You were working hard. I could see it in your face. You're trying everything you can to survive and take care of your kids, but you're drowning anyway. And it's not because you're not trying hard enough. It's because the system is designed to keep people down once they fall." Rebecca felt tears starting to form. She blinked them back. "I had Jennifer research your work history," David said. "I hope that doesn't feel invasive, but I needed to know who you were. And what I found was exactly what I expected. Excellent references, strong work ethic. You're reliable, professional, and you care about doing a good job. You lost your position at the Grand Plaza through no fault of your own. You lost your call center job because the company moved overseas. You've been applying to every job you can find, but you keep getting rejected. I don't have a degree, Rebecca said quietly. That's usually the problem. That's always the problem, David agreed. And it's stupid. Do you know what a degree really means? It means you could afford to not work full-time for 4 years. It means you had family support or financial aid. It means you didn't have major life crises derail your education. It doesn't actually tell me if you're good at your job. He leaned forward. Here's what I want to do, Rebecca. I want to create a position for you. But more than that, I want to build a program around you. A program that helps other people in your situation. Single parents. People who've had bad luck. People who are hardworking and capable but just need a real chance. Rebecca's heart was pounding so hard she felt dizzy. What kind of position? Customer relations coordinator. You'd work with clients, handle inquiries, solve problems, build relationships. It's based on all those customer service skills you've been developing for years. The pay starts at $42,000 a year with full benefits, including health insurance. Rebecca couldn't breathe. $42,000. That was more than she'd ever made in her life. And here's the rest, David continued. Flexible hours so you can handle childcare. We'll help connect you with affordable daycare options. We'll provide training and development so you can grow in the role. And if you want to go to college eventually, we'll help with tuition. Why? Rebecca whispered. Why are you doing this? David smiled, and it was the saddest, kindest smile Rebecca had ever seen. Because someone helped my mother once when she needed it most. And because I have the power to help you, and if I don't use that power, then what's it all for? All this success, all this money. What does it mean if I can't make a real difference in someone's life? He slid an envelope across the table. This is a signing bonus. $5,000 to help you catch up on bills and get back on your feet while you transition into the job. It's not a loan. You don't have to pay it back. Rebecca's hands were shaking as she opened the envelope. Inside was a check. $5,000 made out to her. She stared at it, unable to process what was happening. I don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. Things like this don't happen. Not to people like me. They should happen more often, David said. And if I have anything to say about it, they will. Rebecca looked up at him, tears streaming down her face now. I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't feel like enough. Say you'll take the job. Say you'll help me build this program. Say you'll give other people hope the way I'm trying to give you hope today. Yes, Rebecca said, nodding through her tears. Yes, to all of it, yes. Rebecca walked out of Chen Industries feeling like she was floating. The check was in her purse, folded carefully in an inside pocket where she'd zipped it 3 times to make sure it couldn't fall out. She kept touching her purse just to make sure it was still there. That the whole thing hadn't been a dream. She pulled out her phone to call Mrs. Rodriguez, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unlock the screen. When Mrs. Rodriguez answered, Rebecca could barely get the words out. I got it. I got the job. And they gave me $5,000. $5,000, Mrs. Rodriguez, I can pay my rent. I can buy groceries. I can take Tyler to the doctor for his cold. I can get Lily new shoes. I can breathe. Mrs. Rodriguez started crying on the other end of the phone. Mija, I told you something good was coming. I told you God doesn't forget his children. When are you starting? Monday. I start Monday. He wants me to start right away. Rebecca took the bus straight to the bank. She'd never deposited a check that large before, and part of her was terrified it wouldn't clear, that somehow this would all be revealed as a mistake or a cruel joke. But the bank teller took the check, processed it, and smiled at her. Large deposits take 1 business day to clear, she explained. But you should see it in your account by tomorrow afternoon. 1 more day. Rebecca could wait 1 more day. She'd waited this long, survived this much. She could handle 24 more hours. She went to pick up her kids from Mrs. Rodriguez, who insisted on making them all lunch. While Tyler napped and Lily played with Mrs. Rodriguez's old toy kitchen, Rebecca told her elderly neighbor everything. About David Chen, about his story, about the new program he wanted to build. That man saw you, Mrs. Rodriguez said, reaching across the table to squeeze Rebecca's hand. Really saw you. Most people, they look right through people like us. We're invisible. But he saw you, and he decided to do something about it. That's rare, Mija. That's special. That night, after putting both kids to bed, Rebecca sat down with her laptop and a notebook. She made lists, bills that needed to be paid, Things the kids needed. A budget for her first real paycheck. For the first time in months, the numbers actually worked. More than worked. There would be money left over. Not a lot, but some. Enough to start rebuilding the emergency fund she'd depleted. Enough to stop living on the edge of disaster. She looked at job listings one more time, but this time it was different. She wasn't desperately searching anymore. She was employed. The relief of that simple fact made her cry all over again. When Monday morning came, Rebecca woke up before her alarm. She'd managed to buy a new blouse over the weekend. Nothing fancy but clean and professional and without any stains. She fed the kids breakfast and dropped them off at a new daycare that Jennifer had helped her find. It was subsidized for low-income families, and the staff there seemed kind and patient. "Mommy has to go to work now," Rebecca told Lily, kneeling down to her daughter's level. "But I'll pick you up this afternoon, okay?" "You got a job, right, Mommy?" Lily asked. "So we don't have to be hungry anymore?" Rebecca's heart broke and mended at the same time. "That's right, baby. We're going to be okay now." Chen Industries looked different in the morning light. More real somehow. Rebecca took a deep breath and walked through those glass doors for the second time, but now she belonged here. She wasn't a desperate woman begging for a chance. She was an employee. She had a badge with her name on it waiting at reception. Jennifer met her in the lobby and took her on a tour. The building was bigger than Rebecca had realized. There were 3 floors of offices, a cafeteria that served subsidized meals for employees, a break room with comfortable chairs and a coffee machine, and even a small gym. "All of this is available to you," Jennifer explained. "The cafeteria lunch is $3 for employees. The gym is free. We also have a health clinic on the first floor, where you can see a nurse for minor issues at no cost." Rebecca tried to absorb all of this information. A $3 lunch. Free health care for minor problems. At the hotel, she'd had to bring food from home, and there were no benefits until you'd been there for 6 months. She'd never made it to 6 months. Her office was small, but it had a window. A window. Rebecca had never had her own office before, let alone one with a window. There was a desk with a computer, a phone, and a small plant that someone had left as a welcome gift. "Patricia from HR will be here in about 15 minutes to go through all your paperwork and benefits," Jennifer said. "After that, David wants to meet with you to go over your role in more detail. Is there anything you need right now?" "I'm okay," Rebecca said, though her voice was shaky. "Thank you. For everything." Jennifer smiled. "We're glad you're here, Rebecca. Truly." The paperwork took an hour. Health insurance, dental insurance, retirement plan contributions, direct deposit information. Rebecca signed her name over and over, barely believing this was real. Patricia explained everything patiently, even when Rebecca had to ask her to repeat things because she was having trouble focusing. "You're doing great," Patricia assured her. "I know it's overwhelming. Take your time." When David knocked on her office door 2 hours later, Rebecca was sitting at her desk trying to figure out how to log into the computer system. He smiled when he saw her frowning at the screen. "It can be frustrating. Want me to call someone from tech support?" "Please," Rebecca said gratefully. While they waited for help, David sat in the chair across from her desk. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly, terrified," Rebecca admitted, "and grateful. And confused. And like I might wake up any second and find out this is all a dream." "It's not a dream," David said gently. "You earned this, Rebecca. I want you to understand that. This isn't charity. I hired you because you're qualified and capable and hardworking. The program we're building, it's not about handouts. It's about removing barriers that shouldn't exist in the first place." Over the next hour, David explained her role in detail. She would handle customer inquiries and complaints, build relationships with key clients, and help identify ways to improve customer satisfaction. But she'd also be involved in developing the new hiring program he'd mentioned. "I want your input," David explained. "You've lived through the kind of struggles this program is designed to address. You know what actually helps and what doesn't. What barriers exist that people like me who haven't experienced poverty in decades might not even see." "You really want my opinion?" Rebecca asked, surprised. "Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to need a lot of your opinions over the next few months as we build this thing." Rebecca's first week flew by in a blur of training, meetings, and learning new systems. She met her co-workers who were friendly and welcoming. She learned the company's products and services. She started handling customer calls. and discovered that all those years of hospitality and customer service work had taught her exactly the skills she needed. On Friday afternoon, she got her first paycheck. It was only for 3 days of work, but it was more money than she'd had in her account in months. She sat at her desk and just stared at the direct deposit notification on her phone. "Everything okay?" asked Christine, the woman who worked in the office next to hers. Christine was in her 40s, had been with the company for 7 years, and had taken Rebecca under her wing from day one. "I just got paid," Rebecca said, her voice full of wonder. "I got paid to work somewhere that treats me like a human being." Christine smiled. "That's David for you. He's not perfect, but he actually cares about his employees. You should hear some of the stories. Last year, one of the warehouse guys had a heart attack. No insurance yet because he'd just started. David paid all his medical bills out of pocket. Didn't make a big deal about it, just did it." Over lunch that day, Christine told Rebecca more stories. About the time David shut down production for a whole day to help search for an employee's missing teenager. About the generous parental leave policy he'd implemented after one of his managers had to choose between her job and caring for her newborn. About the employee who was facing eviction and found an envelope of cash on their desk with a note that just said, "Pay me back when you can." "But the thing is," Christine said, "he doesn't want credit for any of it. He never talks about the good things he does. We only know because word gets around." That evening, Rebecca picked up her kids from daycare with money in her pocket and hope in her heart. She took them to the grocery store, and this time, she didn't have to count coins. She filled the cart with fresh fruits and vegetables, milk, eggs, bread, and even a few treats for Lily. Tyler sat in the cart, babbling happily, completely unaware that his mother was experiencing something close to a miracle. At the checkout line, Rebecca paid with her debit card. The total was $73.42. She paid it without flinching, without worrying, without that familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. The cashier handed her the receipt and told her to have a good day, and Rebecca almost laughed because she was having a good day. A really, truly good day. 2 weeks later, David called Rebecca into his office. She still got nervous when he asked to see her, worried that somehow she'd messed something up and this would all be taken away. But David was smiling when she walked in. "Sit down, Rebecca. I want to run something by you." He handed her a folder. Inside were documents outlining the new program they'd been developing. It was called the Second Chance Initiative, and it was designed to hire and support people who were experiencing poverty, had gaps in their employment, or lacked traditional qualifications but had proven work ethic and potential. "This is incredible," Rebecca said, reading through the details. Flexible scheduling, childcare support, starting wages above the poverty line, training and education opportunities, mentorship programs. This could change so many lives. "That's the idea," David said. "But here's the thing. I want to announce this program publicly. I want to challenge other companies to do the same thing. And I want you to be part of that announcement." Rebecca looked up, startled. "Me? What do you mean?" "I want to tell your story. Obviously with your permission, and you can control exactly what details are shared. But Rebecca, your story matters. There are thousands of people out there right now standing in grocery stores counting coins, feeling invisible and hopeless. If they see what happened for you, it gives them hope. And if business leaders see what we're doing here, maybe some of them will be inspired to do the same." Rebecca felt her heart racing. "I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. Having my whole story out there." "I completely understand," David said quickly. "This is entirely your choice. No pressure. But think about it. You don't have to decide today." That night, Rebecca thought about all the times she'd felt invisible. All the times she'd applied for jobs and heard nothing back. All the times she'd stood in lines feeling ashamed, feeling like a burden, feeling like she didn't matter. She thought about other mothers out there right now, facing the same struggles. Other people who were working hard but drowning anyway. Other families one crisis away from disaster. The next morning, she walked into David's office and said, "Okay, let's tell my story. But on one condition. Name it, we tell the whole story. Not just the feel-good ending. We talk about what it's really like to be poor in America. We talk about the systems that keep people trapped. We don't sugarcoat it or make it sound like this is some rare exception. We make it clear that this should be normal, not extraordinary." David smiled broadly. "Deal." 3 weeks later, David gave a speech at a regional business conference. Rebecca sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. David told the audience about seeing her in the grocery store. He told them about his own childhood, and then he invited Rebecca to join him on stage. Her legs felt like jelly as she walked up there. Hundreds of people were looking at her, but David stood beside her, steady and encouraging, and she found her voice. "My name is Rebecca Walsh," she said into the microphone. 6 weeks ago, I spent my last $8.47 on diapers for my son. I cried in my car because I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids. I'd been rejected from dozens of jobs even though I'm a hard worker with good references. The system was designed to keep me down and it was working. She took a deep breath. But then someone saw me. Really saw me. Not just as a statistic or a charity case, but as a person with value and potential. Mr. Chen gave me a chance when no one else would. And now I'm here to tell you that there are thousands of people just like me out there. They're not lazy. They're not looking for handouts. They're drowning and they just need someone to throw them a rope instead of looking away. The room was silent. Rebecca could see people in the audience wiping their eyes. If you're a business leader, she continued, I'm asking you to look for the people like me. The ones counting coins. The ones apologizing for existing. The ones working 3 jobs and still can't get ahead. Hire them, support them, give them the same chance Mr. Chen gave me. Because I promise you, they'll work harder than anyone else in your company. They'll be more loyal. They'll be more grateful. And you'll be changing not just one life, but the lives of their children and their children's children. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood up. Some were crying. Rebecca looked at David, who was beaming with pride. You did amazing, he said quietly. We did amazing, Rebecca corrected. This is just the beginning. The video of Rebecca's speech went viral within 48 hours. It started on the conference's social media page, then got picked up by a local news station. Then a regional news network shared it. Then it exploded across the internet. Within a week, it had been viewed over 8 million times. Rebecca's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friend requests from people she didn't know. Messages from strangers telling her their own stories of struggle. Reporters asking for interviews. It was overwhelming and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I don't know how to handle this, she told David on Monday morning, sitting in his office with her phone face down on the desk. People are calling me inspiring and brave, but I'm just someone who got lucky. I feel like a fraud. David leaned back in his chair. You're not lucky, Rebecca. I mean, yes, you got an opportunity that you deserved. But what you did with that opportunity, that's all you. You didn't just take the job and disappear into a comfortable life. You stood up in front of hundreds of people and told a painful, honest story because you wanted to help others. That's not luck. That's courage. I'm scared, Rebecca admitted. What if this attention dies down and nothing actually changes? What if we got people's hopes up for nothing? Then we keep working, David said simply. The attention will die down eventually. That's how the internet works. But the work continues.